My wife said, I hate it when you cut your hair short. Joke's on her. If you want to know what my setup looks like, it looks like this. But today I want to talk about something I think is really important. Print. The power, the beauty, and the entertainment of print. But before I go any further, I have to explain something. There are two parallel worlds of photography. There's the online photography world, which is websites, blogs, communities, YouTube, things like that. And then you have the actual professional photography industry. That is photographers doing photojournalism, commercial, editorial, advertising, fashion, etc., automotive. And oftentimes it's a parallel set of worlds. They do not intersect. You can run into somebody that has 1 million followers on YouTube and they're completely unknown in the photography industry. And vice versa, you could talk about the best art director, art buyer in the industry, and the online photo community is like, I don't know what you're talking about. This just happened this week. I ran into a pretty successful online photographer, and I mentioned that Robert Frank and Peter Lindbergh had died last week. And he said, I don't know who those people are. So that kind of shows you this parallel. One is not better than the other, they are only different, and that's the point I need to make. Because talking about print, the print is viewed in these worlds very, very differently. So in most of the online world, if people are throwing work around on YouTube and in online galleries and communities, print might not be important, might not be significant to them. I totally get that. In the actual professional photography industry, not to mention illustration world, design world, art world, print is king. Is it the only thing that people do? Absolutely not. But it is a critically important part of people's careers. Every serious photographer I know wants a book deal. Every single one. In fact, a lot of creatives, a lot of photographers in general, they'll spend $30, $40, $50, $100,000 working with publishers to get a book. Now, why on earth would they do that? And that's what I want to talk about in a variety of ways today. And look, I made some handy points. So why is this interesting and important? And I want to go over the important stuff first and then the entertaining and fun stuff at the end. But first and foremost, print, and this is the magazine that I did in Albania, so nothing super fancy, nothing super expensive. Print shows that you can edit. Editing is an art form, it's a skill, it's not taught like it once was. I was fortunate I came up in photography during a time when editing was still very much part of the daily conversation. So I would go do assignments, I would come back and there was a picture editor that I worked with one-on-one every single time I did a shoot. And those picture editors, that's all they did. They didn't shoot, they just edited photographs. And they taught me how to edit. And I'm okay editor, I'm not a great editor. And I have friends and I know people who are singularly incredible editors that can take a body of work and turn it into something that you never saw coming. Going to print shows that you can narrow down your work. So one of the things I see all the time when I teach workshops is someone will go shoot 1,000 pictures and then they'll come to me and say, okay, I made an edit, I'm down to 500. To me, that's not editing at all. That's not even remotely close. Editing would be shooting 1,000 photographs, editing to 50, choosing your best 10, and then identifying the singular best, most important image of the project. That's called editing. A lot of people say that's impossible, but it's not. That's what photographers have been doing forever, and that's what it takes to sort of participate in the professional photo industry. That's one of the abilities. The second thing that editing or printing allows me to do is sequence. And sequencing is simply what image goes first and what image goes last. And you might not think that that's a hugely important aspect of a project, but it is absolutely critical. And I'll share with you a story, a mistake that I made that killed a project of mine pretty much within about 1.5 minutes. So sequencing, I equate to a roller coaster ride. I don't like roller coasters. I'm terrified of them. I don't like heights. I don't like speed. I'm kind of a wimp. But I keep getting on them. And every time I get on a roller coaster, there's always that initial antagonizing, awful buildup to what they're about to make you endure. And it's that click, 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 click. And it's at that point that I question my decision-making paradigm. And I say, why did I get on this thing again? And then they hit you with the drop. And that's what a good sequence in a photo book or magazine or publication does, is it takes you and builds you up and then drops you down and builds you up. It's a narrative. You could say the same thing about a good film, about a good novel. So, and before I go any further, when I'm talking about printing and editing and sequencing, I'm not talking about Blurb. You can use Blurb if you want to. I happen to work for Blurb. Go to Kinko's, go to Walgreens, go to Costco, make Xeroxes. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do anything super fancy. You can also print postcards. I think postcards are one of the best ways of jumping into printing. They're small, they're affordable, they're not super fancy. Hahnemühle makes postcard paper that comes in a metal tin. I buy these all the time. I take all the copies, all the paper out, I print all of them, I put them back in the box, then I have a little box set. I've even given away those box sets, I've sold those box sets, and sometimes I just use individuals and I write postcards. I love to send postcards, I love to receive them. That's a super easy way to get into print. Printing shows that I can edit, it shows that I can sequence, and also it shows, my third point, it shows that I can encapsulate an idea. That I can come up with a project, come up with a story, photograph, edit, sequence, design, and encapsulate in something like this. Now, in the photo industry, the people that I would be showing this to, editors, art buyers, agents, etc., they're gonna know literally within 30 seconds of handling this whether or not I will work for them. That's how quickly the decisions are made, typically. Now, they may look at something, they may see something they like, but say you're not ready or this doesn't quite work right now, come back in 6 months, come back in a year. But print cuts through the noise. And I'll give you another example. Occasionally I'm asked to review portfolios where people pay to have their portfolios reviewed. I've been one of the reviewers. I don't do this a whole lot anymore because I don't know what to say to people. I don't work as a photographer anymore. I work for Blurb full time. And if somebody comes up to me with a fashion portfolio or a street photography portfolio, I don't know what to say to them because I don't know what those industries are like. So I don't feel that I'm super helpful in that regard. But occasionally I will do this. And I will tell you one thing with 100% certainty. When I see the person coming at me, there is a huge difference in my mind of what I'm thinking when someone walks up to me with an iPad versus someone who walks up to me with a printed piece or a box of prints. This typically means nightmare because people do not edit the same way in the digital space that they do in the physical space, the print space. The first thing I do is I look at the number of images in the gallery they're about to show me. I've had people walk up with 500 images in a gallery. That is a major no-no. You shouldn't have 500, you shouldn't have 100, you shouldn't have 50. You should have at the most 20 or 25. With a second backup gallery, you need to be able to show the work, but then also discuss the context of the work, not just the photographs. People are hiring a lot more than your photographs. They're hiring you as a human being, and that's a really important part. Print tends to signify that you've put a very important thing in place. Printing requires critical thought towards your work. What image goes on the cover? What image goes on the back cover? What do I start with? What's in the middle? How much copy do I use? All of that takes critical thought. You have to put your phone down, you have to turn the TV off, you have to turn YouTube off, and you have to focus. And people in the professional photo industry know that and they respect it. They might still hate my story, literally. Nope, no interest, don't like anything about this. But I was able to deliver the message of what the story was concisely. That's a critical part of why I think printing is great. I'm trying to start my iPad here. I'm electronically challenged if you haven't figured that out. The last point, second to last point I want to make is that this is a financial commitment. That in itself, again, separates you from the masses of people who are not printing. This grand total for me to print this was $20. This is a 92-page premium magazine. I think personally, this looks absolutely unbelievably good. I think magazine is a sleeper format. And again, I don't care if you use Blurb, use MagCloud, use whatever, Kinko's, Costco, Walgreens, doesn't matter. But I had to commit financially. Now, I spent thousands of dollars to go to Albania to do the project. I went over there, airlines, transport, hotels, food, etc. I cannot imagine coming back from something like that and not spending $20 to encapsulate what I did. That just seems crazy to me. Now, also what this allowed me to do while I was in Albania on the trip was I was able to design it in real time as I went along. Every afternoon, every evening, I took a little bit of time, typically about an hour. I edited the day's take, which is also a smart thing to do because then I'm not expecting myself to edit the entire mass of images when I get back. I'm doing it on a daily basis. And then I'm laying these pages out in the software as I go. Now, I typically work entirely by myself, but in Albania, I was with 4 other photographers. And it was so much fun for me to sit with the software, looking at my spreads and my sequence in the magazine, and having another photographer sit with me and say, swap those out, move this one here, change this. And in real time, you're watching your edit and sequence change. That was fascinating. And then also by the time I got back, all I had to do was hit print, and a couple of days later it shows up and I'm done. And now I can sort of feel like the chapter's closed, the door's closed, and I can move on. Lastly, with print, I think a point that gets overlooked because people put so much pressure on themselves to make these like perfect objects or perfect things. Printing is fun. Again, I print postcards all the time. I spent a lot of time the first 20 years of my career in the darkroom. I made darkroom prints all the time. I had a darkroom up until very recently. I got Lyme disease a couple of years ago. The doctors advised me to stay away from the chemicals, so I don't really make darkroom prints that much anymore. But I'm constantly making prints. It is fun. It is an absolute joy to do this. I don't view it as a chore. I view it as just an essential part of like sort of closing the doors, closing chapters on my projects. So that in a nutshell is what I want to talk to you about print. There's going to be a lot more of these talks about print. I have a lot of new projects in the works. I've got one in California, I've got two in New Mexico, and I'm going to be doing a lot more of these films, not only about the projects themselves and about kind of what I'm trying to do, how I'm trying to do it, but then ultimately what I end up with in tangible, beautiful, printed form. Good luck and have fun.